The Mystery of BELICENA VILLCA. Second Book. The Letter of BELICENA VILLCA. 49th Day. From now on, Dr. Setonal, I will retake the disrupted narration in the 43rd day. I think that in the last 5 days I have clarified the fundamental concepts of the Hyperborean wisdom enough, and that it was worth to make a stop in the history of the House of Tharsis for it. The hinge of the history was produced when the Hyperborean strategy at Philip IV triumphed over the synarchic plans of the wide fraternity, and the major staff of the Order of the Temple was sent to the stake. And in that feat was not a minor role the one that the House of Tharsis had to perform, operating actively in the Circulus Demonicanis, what would attract over them the attentive gaze of the liberator gods, of the lords of Venus, who would impress to the lineage an unexpected course. But I will not advance to the facts. In the stakes of the Demonicanis Inquisition, the plans of the White Fraternity became ashes. 2 main facts confirmed that end: the dismemberment of the financial synarchy effectuated by Philip IV, and the flight to Scotland of the College of Temple Constructors, where centuries later would give birth to the Freemasonry. About this last one, it is convenient to remember what was said in the 16th day, when I explained why that College of Temple Constructors needed to rediscover the tablets of the law. With these tablets in their power, the Gauleans would be in conditions to raise the Temple of Solomon in Europe, accomplishing in this manner with the plans of the wide fraternity, and elevating the chosen people to the throne of the world. Philip IV, warned by his Demonicanis instructors about these intentions, he suspended the activity of the 3 Mason guilds when the process of the Templar started, under the accusation of complicity and participation in the crimes of them. The hit aims to the Guild of Constructors of Solomon, that integrated the Order of the Temple in quality of Friars Minor after receiving training in the Cytos. Must not be forgotten that the real name of the order, designed by the Gaulean Saint Bernard, in the Order of the Temple of Solomon, or Ordo Templum Salomonis. The Constructors of Solomon passed immediately to clandestinity, and escaped from France, not before the loss of many members in the tortures and the stake. What information was expected to obtain from them? The identification of the Temple of Solomon, is this had been already built, or the revelation of its future emplacement, and the advance of the works. It is necessary to notice that the Gauleans constructed in the 13th century cathedrals at Chartres, Reims, Amiens, Strasbourg, Metz, Narbonne, etc. And any of them could be hiding the search temple. Nevertheless, there were 2 conditions that were considered by the Demonicanis. The first one, the exigency that the temple contained, on its structure, the secret of the serpent, projected in the 22 letters of the sacred alphabet of Jehovah Satan. And the second, that the emplacement corresponded to the most sacred place for the Gauleans. But this was already known, was not easy to discover. The temple, due to the Constructors of Solomon, preferred to die without talk, and the city refused to reveal its secret. In fact, neither the cathedrals of St. Jean, or St. Martin, both built with the Gaelic method, had nothing to do with the Temple of Solomon, due to, on it not appeared the secret of the serpent nor the 22 signs of the sacred alphabet. When finally, in 1310, Philip the Fair acquired the rights over Lyon, he sent a party at Demonicanis, specialists in Gaulean architecture, to inspect inch by inch the region. This attempt would have success only 1 year later, when they found a Templar patronage on the Mount of Ferviers, the foundations of a temple which fitted in all its measures to the archetypal proportions of the universe. The Gauleans projected to end the edification simultaneously with the instauration of the world government, and was already there to be assembled like a puzzle. In nearby deposits were located the stones, beams and furniture, the altar, ritual instruments, etc. And all was meticulously destroyed by express order of the king, who also authorized the Demonicanis to occupy such site as a liberated area in the universe, and to fortify it with a strategic wall of stone. The rests of such construction based in the Hyperborean wisdom are still conserved. In 1314, the enemy was living a generalized disaster, and the danger that obeyed the House of Farsis, to remain hidden for 40 years disappeared. The Galeen terror would be defeated by the Dominicanus terror, directed by the men of stone, which for the case were also men without fear. Of course, the peril of the final death, represented by Beret and Bishar, had not disappeared at all. But, the immortals were in another sphere of the reality, and by the moment would not return to deal with the House of Farsis. Instead the Gauleans were out of action, and they could not detect to the survivors of the House of Farsis anymore. But, something very strange occurred now in the family. As consequence, perhaps, of the realized progress by the lineage in the accomplishment of the familiar mission. Or maybe, by the effect of a genetic concentration, produced, in, the survivors, after the almost extermination of the lineage, or, by any other unknown cause, the truth was that the familiar hereditary characters had been differentiated notably, since the two matrilineal branches founded by Brunolde and Valentina. Amongst the offspring of both ladies came men of stone, but only the sons and grandchildren of Valentina demonstrated vocation for the Nevreada. The men of stone, who originated from the blood of Brunolde, on the contrary, detested to stand guard before the wise sword, and they had only one objective: to attack the enemy as soon as possible. While the Valentinianos appeared gifted to interpret the great plans of the liberator gods, and to contribute to its ordered execution, the Vernaldinos pretended to pass immediately to the action. In the scheme of the essential war, could be assured that the first were pure strategists, while the second, perfect tacticals. All the men of stone, without exception, continued revisiting the Circulus Dominicanus. However, during the reign of Philip IV, the Valentinianos had dedicated to project the strategy of the mystic nation, and they advised the king in secrecy about the manner to fight against the Gauleans, while amongst the Vernaldinos offspring of Brunolde of Farsis were the most brave and audacious knights who had to face the English and Flemish, and within the most terrible inquisitors they supported the Templars. Also the Brunoldinos, for being Spaniards, they participated in many episodes of the Reconquest, and the repression to the Judaism, and the religion of the infidels. By the year 1310, when the triumph of the strategy of the Pact of Blood was envisioned, one of the Valentinianos went to the Candelaria Hill, and localized the secret cavern. After burying the Drea, whose corpse still remained seated before the wise sword, and restituting the flame of the perennial lamp, he took the place of the Noyo, and reestablished the millenary guard. The Vernaldinos would supply him from the Catalan fortress, which in that time existed in some place of the chapel, at the feet of the hill. Such Noyo was a man of stone relatively young, not very wise. He remained in the cavern for the next 5 years, during which the destruction of the Order of the Temple, and the Gauleans' power collapsed in France. Within the members of the House of Farsis, as is natural, the defeat of the Gauleans had caused a general climate joy. But, no one expected that something new would occur, something related to the secret cavern, to the wise sword, to the familiar mission, to the Pact of Blood. Nevertheless, in the first days of June of 1315, all received an identical encrypted message. It was about a citation of the Noyo, to concur to an extraordinary familiar reunion the day 21 inches San Felix de Caraman. In the day, in the castle of Valentina, the lords of Farsis celebrated for first time in 40 years a family council. The meeting was scheduled for the 21 hours, but at the 19 almost everyone was in the main hall of the castle. Only the Noyo was missing, who, according to the Castilian, he had been locked in a tower, without descending in all the day. Many didn't know each other, and the presentations and salutations created a festive climb. While they were eating a cold and light dinner, they didn't stop to transmit news and comment the last events of France. The names of Pierre Flet, William of Nogret, William Plagian, Clement V, and other lords of the dog, were pronounced with much respect and admiration. But, the one of Philip IV was on the apex of the general veneration. And it was not for less. The great king, by means of the sanction of 350 laws of Dominicanus origin, had transformed France in the first nation of Occident. And also, and mainly, he had destroyed in great measure the Gaulians' infrastructure, apart from eliminating the major Templar staff, and to obey the escape of the rest. For this reason, those who were virtual survivors of the breach, joyfully laughed when remembering the Templar stakes. In the moment when they raised their copes, in direction to the coat of arms of the House of Farsis, that dominated the hall since the superior wall of the home, entered the Noyo, who joined to the celebration. Honoret mortis! He screamed with thunderous voice. Ad inimicus! Responded with vehemence the presence. The bellicose group was composed by 18 lords of Farsis, 10 knights, and 8 ladies, all men of stone. 12 of them were Granadinos, and 6 Valentinianos. The 17 remained in silence, looking expectant the newcomer. The Noyo started to speak immediately. Ladies and gentlemen, you must have the security that if I have cited you, with such urgency had not been for caprice, but, due to a matter unable to be postponed demanded it. While continued speaking, he impressed on his words a tone of severity such that, something unthinkable in a man of stone, suggested the influence of a strong impression. Similar effect could not be caused by such assembly. It had to be another thing. Really, he continued, this meeting was requested by him, who you all know immediately. I know, for my part, that prudence advised to wait some more years, before to sustain a family council. A sound emerged from every throat, because a murmur was elevated around the hall. All were amazed, by the revelation of a visitor, due to, in the dilated history of the House of Farsis, the men of stone had never gathered in presence of a stranger. Once the collective exclamation was dissipated in the space, the Noyo continued. Don't worry, men of stone, because the secret of the House of Farsis will remain safe. Our guest is not from this world. He will come here from Catawba, and then he will return to the city of the gods. But, it is not necessary to tell you the circumstances of my encounter with him, one of the liberator gods of the spirit of men, one of the lords of Venus. As you know, since 5 years ago, that I am maintaining the guard of the wise sword. In that period of time, I never stopped to contemplate the stone of Venus, but nothing different I warned on it. Day after day, I was concentrated on its contemplation, expecting to see the sign of the origin, or the lithic sign of the Catawba, but nothing new occurred. Just the dancer signs of the illusion, the created archetypes, by God the One, which were also inside of us, passed vainly through my sight. Nevertheless, one day occurred something different. Was in May, a little before I convoked you. The narration was followed with superlative attention. Undoubtedly, the Noyo had an amazing experience, but certainly extraordinary, uncommon, irregular. The liberator gods, since thousands of years that they didn't manifest themselves unto men, since the age of the white Atlanteans. Well, that day, after many hours of meditation, I fell asleep, before the wise sword. I ignore how much time I remained in that state. I only remember that a musical sound awakened me, until I distinguished with clarity the wordy roding winada, modulated in the language of the birds. Coincidentally, when I stared at the wise sword, I saw the runes that formed that word shining perfectly clear in the center of the stone of Venus. My astonishment had no limits, as you can imagine, when I heard, sprouting at my back, a voice, gifted with the majesty of the eternal spirit, which was pronouncing my name. When I saw his countenance, I found myself before a plethoric being of light, who was watching me smiling beside the right angle of the secret cavern. I understood then, that it was he who was projecting the sign T-roding Widnada, on the stone of Venus, and was trying to catch my attention. I returned quickly to contemplate the runes, but, believe me men of stone, that would result difficult to communicate what happened in that moment. Alongside accompanied the last words of the Noyo. After a second of vacillation, during which the bright of his eyes turned off, and the attention seemed to pass inside of me, he firmly continued. In that moment, gentlemen, I understood the meaning of the T-roding with a sign. And its comprehension gave me the highest level of the Hyperborean wisdom. It was the Eternal Spirit, who was breaking free and isolating itself, as never before, from the illusion of the created forms. My own spirit, fixed and planted as a manha, that remains and emerges in the temporal flow of the soul, suddenly was sustained in the origin, in its eternal and infinite moment. I knew it all. I had returned to the origin, I was free from the incarceration of the matter, and had understood the reason of the fall. If I would have wanted to, I'd have been able to leave right there towards Hyperborea. But I could not do so. Not while the familiar mission won't be accomplished. Not for as long you remain here, amongst the demons. Not for as long the final battle against the powers of the matter won't be fought. Honor prevents me to leave. And perhaps, such decision was that such being was expecting due to, he have just spoke. Oh, Noyo of Tharsis. He said, don't be surprised to feel the strong land of the spirit. The gods are with you. It is the will of Neptune, what sustains you now in the universe, the Varuns of his name. And the grace of Freya. And the caliber power, of the Varun of the death. I have come, unto you to confirm your existence, and the one of your house, to engrave in the cold stone, the sign that would situate you in the origin, and will determine it, to prevail over the lie of the final death. I will tell what you must do, O keeper of the stone of Venus. It is necessary that the initiates of your house agree with me, in some site of the universe, wherever it could be. Once reunited, I will transmit you the message of the gods. I will leave you this stone, put it in the same place, before the right angle, and I will be there in the precise moment. Once he said it, he faded away, as mysteriously as he had appeared, and found myself absolutely alone, in the secret cavern. The stone of Venus didn't reflect the sign T-roding with Dawa anymore, but I could see it, if I proposed to. Finally, after 5 days of meditation, I decided to get closer to Tuts, and to send messengers to convoke you, and realize the requested meeting by the Lord of Venus. A few minutes elapsed where anyone spoke. All had remained as bewitched by the narration of the Noyo. Finally, one of the man of stone interrogated. The stone. What meant the Lord of Venus when he spoke about leaving us a stone? Well, the case is that when he faded away from the right angle, replied the Noyo, a curious stone appeared from where he was, and I was unable to explain how it reached to that part of the cavern. And what have you done with it? I have brought it here. The Noyo opened a leather bag that he had tied to his waist and extracted from it a rustic piece of black basalt. The stone was a little column of 8 or 9 inches tall, and rectangular base. Without doubting he gave it to whom had asked him for it. Soon it passed from hand to hand, until it returned to the Noyo again, who took the floor again. Ladies and gentlemen, I propose to try the contact with the gods, just as they've suggested. I have disposed a tower of the castle for that objective, and I think that it is time to go thither. Approved all with one voice. Don't waste more time.